Think they could hear us?
I don't know.
Think they can hear us? Yeah, I can hear us. What's going on, guys? Good morning. I'm sitting here with, what's your name?
My name's Barbara.
Barbara, and what do we know you as? What would we see you as maybe on a social media?
In the past, I've been out as Momma Red.
Momma Red.
Momma Red.
And you've been sitting here this morning. We're waiting in front of the Trump rally. We're about T-minus 26, 25, 24 hours.
I know, right? Isn't that crazy?
So we've been here all night and we've been waiting. So you were telling me that you are very involved in New Jersey. That's where you live.
Yes.
So
yes, very much.
What do you do in Jersey?
Well, you know what? It all kind of started. For me, it started with 9/11.
Right.
We were just talking about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So 9/11, my daughter was 3 months old, and I knew at that time that things were going to be very different in her lifetime as an adult. And I raised her with the abilities to hunt, fish, gather, and not be afraid of the land, not being afraid to have to survive on her own.
Right.
For her to be able to fiercely advocate for herself. In first grade, she wanted to get her seat changed, and I made her go ask the teacher before I would intercede.
Right.
Teach her how to advocate. And just give a shout out because she's now a Marine.
Yeah.
And she'll be coming up on 3 years in service. So she doesn't like a lot of my political activities.
Right.
Which really took off about 2 weeks after COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
When COVID first hit, I dropped off. I'm a school bus driver in New Jersey, and I remember the last little girl that got off my bus and looking at her, and it felt like 9/11.
Yeah.
And ironically, the district that I work in has a 9/11 memorial. And when you go to that, you can look out and you can see New York City.
Right.
And I had spent time 9/11 because Sage was 3 months old, and it was so traumatic. It's always been a day that I do remember, and I taught her, I raised her. So she, 3 months old, she's one of the first, she's like that year of child that doesn't have a memory of it.
Yeah.
Unless their parents taught them.
Yes.
I've always been patriotic. So when I went home from the COVID shutdown on March 13th of 2020, I was like, I felt like we'd been attacked again.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of single parents in my neighborhood. My daughter had completed boot camp and was in her next phase of training. So I was an empty nester, and that's been very difficult for me, having raised her by myself as a single mom. So I started helping the moms in the neighborhood. And then they were like, we've got to get our kids out. So we started hiking.
Right.
I started walking around my neighborhood with my flag.
Yeah.
My American flag. And I was just doing lives on my Facebook, just talking to people. And trying to get people to realize that COVID's not what they were saying. There's something not right about what's going on, and this is about 3 weeks into it. Then when the shutdown happened and it was not going to go away, I took myself to Trenton for a Reopen New Jersey rally, just reopen rally.
Right, yeah.
And that really began the Momma Red phase.
Yeah.
Of everything. That took me to Attila's gym.
Yes, everyone knows Attila's gym.
So Frank and Ian, if you guys ever see this video, love you guys, you know that. They are New Jersey's Boston Tea Party.
Yes, they stood up against the mandates and the business closures.
They not only stood up against Jeffrey, but they were literally pushed every direction possible. From sabotage of their building, to chains being put on their doors, to the boards being put on their doors, to their license being taken away,
Right.
all because Governor Murphy, as he's famous to say, the Constitution is above his pay grade.
Right.
And he just trampled on everyone's constitutional rights, and it was literally happening in front of our faces. That morphed into fighting for our freedom to not wear a face mask.
Yes.
I work in schools. Executive Order 251 had originally allowed for parental attestations to be, so they had shut down, they were opening the schools. Some schools in New Jersey never had school the entire year from March 13th of 2020 to all the way to March 13th, 2021, and even June of 2021.
Right.
Some of them just reopened in the fall of 2022 for the first time. We went back with face masks in the buildings.
Right.
I wasn't going to go back to work. A friend of mine who's a teacher, she had said, what if you're the brightest part of a child's day? What if that child, and so I would pull the mask down, tell them that they could take their mask down.
Right.
I have to say, in the school that I was in, it was pretty loose.
Yeah.
I was with kindergartners. We didn't really, if they took their mask down, occasionally they were asked to put it back up. But even on my bus, this was you could see that the children couldn't communicate.
Right.
The children weren't talking to each other.
Yeah.
The children were not having the interactions that they're supposed to have. They're not forming friendships. So we met this morning.
Yeah.
And as we met this morning, we were kind of juxtaposing about who's sitting where and who's set up where,
little thing going on,
and then we did a handshake
and we did a hug,
and a hug, and now we're sitting in like this Trump circle of friends.
Yeah.
And that's how humans interact.
That's it. And then
could you imagine if we were sitting here trying to do this with a freaking diaper on our face?
And I wouldn't be able to connect with someone with something on their face, so I can't really see who they are. And what did you say? That whole thing was just ridiculous.
Yes.
And then plexiglass, and and virtual.
In my
everything's
bus.
Virtual.
So this is what I like looking at things and trying to figure out how can I get around it.
Yeah.
And when I say that, meaning Murphy made 251. Oh, and so let me go back a little bit. So after Attilas, and we all kind of go back to summer. We were doing rallies and so forth. We're trying to keep the momentum going to reopen New Jersey.
Right.
Then the next phase was the DC rallies. And the first DC rally, the second DC rally, the third DC rally. I'm gonna skip talking in depth about the J6 because that's literally a whole entire another conversation.
Yeah.
Moving forward to after J6 and then January 20th, when the current administration took office.
Yes.
I had such hope from November to January 20th. Let me silence this.
Yeah, you can just, no problem.
I had such hope that something was going to happen.
Right.
That Trump was going to be put in office.
Yeah.
That they were going to acknowledge. We all know cheating's happened.
Right.
Cheating has happened for decades. And at the time, I held on to that hope. I literally went into a depression after the things that happened on J6. Then January 20th, watching Biden take office.
Yes.
I was like, rallies didn't mean the same anymore. Getting, it's not that I loved Trump.
Right.
Still was fully behind Trump, but I felt defeated.
You just feel the fear that's coming, and you just hope that, I was following Mike Lindell and other people that were in on these the Maricopa County full forensic audit.
Yes.
People that were with that and looking at the ballots, and it was just this hope that somebody would come through with the evidence. And then there was evidence put forth to the Supreme Court, and unfortunately the Supreme Court, there was enough people that said they didn't want to see it, that they couldn't look at the findings, they couldn't look at the evidence. So I mean, it was sad, and then you just see every week there's something new. First, he reversed a bunch of decisions that Trump had made, and then it was slowly things were turning and changing that we just couldn't stand. You know, it was going backwards from where we had moved forward.
Exactly.
You know?
And then you take it to the state level.
Yes.
So trying to disconnect a little bit and yet find new purpose, because I realized that we're not going to be able to put Trump back in office.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. Even now, it's not going to happen. And I know that there's the talks of, you know, a shadow thing going on here and a shadow thing going on there. And you know what? Please let that be true.
Right.
Because right now, in the state of New Jersey, we're under a dictatorship.
Yes.
We're under a dictatorship even more than New York. And I would venture to say more than California.
Okay.
I don't understand why New Jersey doesn't get as much media attention. We have a governor that the Constitution is above his pay grade. We have a governor that is still mandating vaccine-free individuals to be tested in order to go to their place of employment. It was just lifted for myself. We have a governor that is allowing our children to literally be sexualized at kindergarten.
Right.
A 7-year-old can be taught by a teacher what their private parts are and what are proper names for their private parts.
Right. I mean, I believe I was probably in 11th or 12th grade when a teacher told me that. You know, a health teacher told me one day in class what's going on. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, the little birds and the bees talk.
Right.
That your mom and dad probably had already had with you at numerous, times around the kitchen table.
Right.
Or in the family living room, or they showed you a movie or whatever they did. It was done in the home, and it was done by the parents, and it was truly a situation that was completely up to the family.
Yeah.
No matter what the family's made of. No one's judging any families. I don't know anybody who judges family. They just want the decisions to be up to the family.
Yes.
And so that takes you into November of 2020. Back to that with the ballot. I decided to run for school board.
Right.
I had ran for school board and served from 2010 to 2013. My little town in New Jersey is about 500, 600 kids. And at that time, some of them went to school in the state of New York.
Right.
And I believed that our tax dollars and our students deserved a New Jersey education. The state of New York school that they went to was a failing school district.
Really?
So I got involved and I helped fix it, because that's what we do. That's what we're supposed to do as Americans.
Stand up and get in your community.
Yes.
And get, involved.
So after J6, after the 2020, watching Biden take office, I felt like, you know what? Going to DC isn't going to help my town. It's not going to help the kids in my district.
Right.
Going to Trenton, not going to help them right now, because who's in control? The Democrats.
Right.
We failed to elect Jack Ciattarelli governor.
Yes.
And the reason we failed is because there are too many people within the Republican Party that either don't like Trump or they don't like a rhino.
Right.
So when you put those two hard-headed groups of people aside, they're defeating the elections. They're losing the elections for us.
Yeah.
Because the people that wanted Trump, well, Jack wasn't the right guy. The people who didn't want Trump, Jack was the right guy. And then the people in the middle weren't enough to push us over the top with Murphy.
Right. I mean, that was a very close race.
It was close. And I believe there was shenanigans in Bergen County.
There always is.
All of a sudden he jacks up, and then 1 o'clock in the morning hits, and Cinderella goes home, and and oh my God, we got Governor Murphy again.
Yeah.
You know, and so what do?
Yeah.
I have to get on the school board. I got to go on the school board again. Now we have personal things in our town that we needed to take care of, and one of the things I'm proud of is that I was on the ballot with Trump. So you see Trump versus Biden on the left side, and on the right side you see Barbara Holstein for Board of Education,
right, and
Denise Bogle. I don't know, she'll probably get mad at me for using her name on here, but she's a public figure. You're elected, Denise. I can't.
Right.
So we both ran. We both got elected. We have a very strong conservative voice in our town. Mm-hmm. So as soon as we got rid of the superintendent, because one of the biggest problems with our school districts is the union, the NJEA, right, and the Department of Education. They're all in cahoots, especially in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. So a school district, though, is run by its school board. And in order to affect change, you have to use policy. And then you have to put a superintendent in place who's going to listen to the school board. Right. Most of New Jersey schools, it's the reverse. Your superintendent tells the school board what to do. People get elected in, and they don't bother doing their due diligence. They don't bother doing their homework, right, which is what due diligence is. They just kind of fill in a seat down. And they just sit there and rubber stamp. Oh, right, he's the really smart guy. And so many people say to me, when I say to them, run for the board, please. Mm-hmm. And I'll go to meetings. I'm part of the Tea Party group, and we have the Republican committee groups and stuff like that. And I'm sorry. And I'm like, we have all of this people showing up to rallies, waving the flags on the streets. Right. If you were standing on a corner, you should be running for office or helping someone get elected right now. Yes. That is where our voices needs to be. If you're not door knocking for a politician, then you should be running for office, and vice versa. If you've got money and you can donate, I can't. So I have to go door knock, because the only way I can really help is boots to the ground, yeah, and go door knock. And I have done that. I did it for Jack. I did it for another Jersey candidate during a primary. Mm-hmm. And recently I've been out for my friend who's running for commissioner in Union County. Yeah. So I'm going to make a small prediction here that we are going to see. We have many people running for boards of education, just like in Florida. So you saw DeSantis went out and he said, I endorse this school board member. We don't even have Republicans doing that. When I go to the Republican committee meetings for my county, I have to remind them, hey guys, we need to talk about school boards. Yeah. It's not just your town officials, it's not just your county officials. Schools are really important, and they're elected positions. And like they always say, the children of the future, and these are going to be future voters. Yes. And what they want to do is indoctrinate the children with what they believe, is right, or whatever, whatever absolutely propaganda really they want to give them. And it's actually, Jeffrey, it's been happening since I was in school. So one of the things that you get when you get older is you get able to look back and be wiser. Yeah. And so there's a line in a song. I'll give a shout out to Dave Bray USA, because I love Dave Bray USA. And a line in his song was about we were all Americans before the hyphens came along. Right. And I was about 15 years old. No, I was 14 when Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA was played at the fireworks display and that my mom took me to. And I have loved that song ever since. Yeah. But I grew up in West Virginia, and I grew up very Democrat, very patriotic. Really? In West Virginia? Yep. Yeah. So it took me a long time to start seeing all the things that led us here. Mm-hmm. The breakdown of the family. Yes. And it's not a racial thing. No. White families were broken up by divorce as much as fatherless families in the black community. Mm-hmm. So white families were encouraged to get divorced and have multiple marriages, and the black communities were encouraged to have abortions and have fatherless babies. Because that's where most of the clinics were. Yep. Yeah. And that's still where they are. Yeah. And then you have any other minority family that is struggling. When they go to get help, that help is coming with, by the way, make sure you vote for this guy. make sure you vote for the Democrats. Make sure you keep them in office because they're providing this.
Yeah.
But in reality, we're all providing it. We're all taxpayers.
Yes, we all.
We all pay a federal, state, and local taxes. They don't give things out without something attached to it, without strings attached. What they've done and what I've recently realized, and I realize I'm kind of jumping around, but it all fits into the whole narrative of you've got to be local, local, local.
Right.
So where I do my Board of Ed work is in my town. Where I do my advocacy is trying to help other school board members run for school boards now. Other school board members who are on a school board know how to sit in that seat. A lot of people aren't used to Robert's Rules of Order. They're intimidated. So I know one district that they're 2 out of 9. 2 conservatives out of 9. And that teachers union is blasting. They come to every meeting and they write things and they blast these 2 board members and they call them out for medical freedom, for parental rights. They call them out and they say, shame on you, you're being this and you're being that. And they're pushing hard. So I talk to them, I'm like, guys, stick it in there. Stick in there until you flip your seats, you get 3 elected, you go from 2 to 5.
Yeah.
You now have a majority. And when you have that majority on the board, you now have a voice.
Yes.
And I've even taught them how to have a voice with just 2 people. It takes one board member to make a motion, it takes another board member to second it, and once that motion's on the floor, then you all have discussion.
Right. So at least you get the issue out there. You make it known to people that this is what's going on.
Exactly.
That you want to fight against this or whatever it is, and that way the parents can hear it and they can know.
Yeah.
Do they like live stream these things or like?
Okay. Well, that's a great question because during COVID, some schools were forced to go virtual for their board meetings, and COVID literally had 2 effects. It had the effect of isolating people out of like government for a while, but the other effect was opening it up to where, because they were doing live Zooms, more people were joining.
Yeah.
So in my school district that I currently sit on the school board at, which I wasn't on during COVID, they did in-person board meeting, but they Zoomed it.
Right.
Okay, but they weren't keeping it on the Facebook. Like as soon as it was recorded, or I'm sorry, I guess as soon as it was lived, then it was taken off.
Right.
Okay. When we were elected, we kept a hybrid. We, meaning Denise and I, which joined another 3, which gave us a majority.
Yeah.
So we said, well, we want to do hybrid meeting. Why do we want it? And some people were like, well, no, that's too much work. It's this and that. And I'm like, no, look at this. You have 30 people watching.
Yeah.
You've never had 30 people in the audience. So
right, they never knew.
So more people are involved. So we set it up, and this is how our board meetings work. Many school districts in New Jersey went back to in-person meetings. Because why? Because the parents are doing soccer and doing football and doing this and do homework and feeding dinner, and they were working. They can't come to school board meetings. Now, granted, I look at it as they're 1 a month. We do 2 a month.
Right.
But so I feel that people need to make more time to be involved in those meetings.
Yeah.
You cannot expect things to change if you're not willing to do the work to change them.
Yes.
You just can't. And so we live it. Public comment is allowed.
Right.
From the Zoom. I think we do it through Zoom. And then, so I'll be like, hi, Zoom land. And I'll be like, how many people do we have in Zoom land? And they'll be like, oh, we've got 6 or we've got 7. I mean, it's been a little low over the summer.
Right. No, I can understand that. Yeah.
But people call in. They'll give their public comment.
Yeah.
We're conducting the business both virtually and in person.
Right. So
And
that's good.
I'll go back to the Executive Order 251 a little bit. So he did 251, Murphy, and when 253 hit, because 251 had parental attestations.
Right.
So a parental attestation would have allowed a parent to write a note to the school and say, hey, you know what? My kid can't wear a mask. And Middletown School District, which is actually Murphy's hometown, if he has a hometown, he's not really from Jersey, so it's a pseudo hometown. they immediately jumped on it, and they did a first reading to accept that 251 and allow parental attestations to be sent in so your child didn't have to wear a mask, right?
Right.
2 days, within 48 hours, Murphy put out 253 that then required the vaccine for teachers and or testing if you're not vaccinated. And they slipped a little line in there, and that little line said basically, oh, by the way, those parental attestations in 251, I'm revoking them.
Right.
So no parental attestation. So parents' rights were taken away by executive order once again. So what did we do? Well, we passed a resolution that accepted the parental rights, the same as Middletown in my school district, and we tried to keep it.
Right.
Legally, the lawyer said, look, you can't. You know, so school districts, we are custodians of your taxpayers' dollars. We get about 5 million taxpayer dollars from our taxpayers.
Right.
I don't want to put the school district in a liable situation where taxpayer dollars are going to go to a lawyer or the courts and not to the students.
Yeah.
It's no good. So we complied. We put the masking policy in place, but we allowed IEPs, 504s, anybody that came in with a legit medical reason. There was no hassles given.
Right.
That was from then until March of 22. It seems like so long ago now that he lifted the mask order. But part of the masking, everybody was wearing them, but letter H was if you're operating a vehicle and wearing the or machinery that makes it unsafe. Well, I'm a CDL driver. I drive a bus.